What is going on? This is Mac, and we're going to go ahead and review and practice the brain. So let's start with neural development, and we'll go 3 to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks, we have, let's write that procephalon. And then by the fifth week, what do we get? That's right. Fifth week, we get the telencephalon and diencephalon. And then the final structures for the telecephalon is the cerebral hemispheres, and the final structures for the diencephalon, that's right, thalamus and hypothalamus. This is just a review. Make sure you have your notes handy. Have your notes right by your side. 3 to 4 weeks, the mesencephalon. At 5 weeks, it remains the mesencephalon. And the final structures, midbrain colliculi. Rhombencephalon at 3 to 4 weeks. At the fifth week, that's right, we get myelencephalon and metencephalon. Of course, our final structure for that metencephalon is pons and cerebellum. And for the myelencephalon, that's right, medulla oblongata. Now, Dr. Coatney suggested a way that we can remember this 2-day mess met Milo. 5 weeks, we have telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, metencephalon, and myelencephalon. A few definitions we want to remember. A fold in the brain. That's right. We call that a gyrus. And a groove in the brain, we call that a sulcus. In the brain, a collection of neural cell bodies inside the central nervous system, equivalent to a ganglion. What do we call that? That's right. Nucleus. Just keep moving. In the brain, a collection of axons traveling through the brain, equivalent to a nerve in the peripheral nervous system. In the brain, the collection of axons traveling through the brain, equivalent to a nerve in the PNS. That's right, a tract. Good, keep moving. Cerebral hemispheres. Okay, cerebral hemispheres, lobes of the brain. What is this lobe? And what do we associate this lobe with? That's right, the frontal lobe, associated with math, personality, problem solving, planning, and motive. Good. How about here? That's right. The parietal lobe, associated with sensory interpretation. How about here? Right on. Occipital lobe, associated with visual cortex. And how about here? Right on. Temporal lobe, associated with hearing, language, smell, taste, and balance. Features of the cerebral hemisphere we have here. That's right. That's our precentral gyrus, our primary motor cortex. All right, here. That's right. That's the lateral fissure. Lateral fissure. And what about here? Yes. Post-central gyrus, primary sensory cortex. What about here? Yes. Central sulcus. So we have the precentral gyrus, primary motor cortex, post-sensory gyrus, primary sensory cortex. Mid-sagittal view of the brain. This region, that's right, parietal lobe. All right. How about here? That's right. There's the corpus callosum. It's the neural tract that allows communication across the brain, right to left. Here, right on. It covers the lateral ventricles. About here. What about here? That's right. The fornix. Fornix. That's our communication tract for the limbic system. What about here? That's right. That's the occipital lobe. Occipital lobe. And remember, occipital lobe is going to be our visual cortex, right? Let's talk about the limbic system. The limbic system has three parts, and it connects to the hypothalamus to get our A and S responses to emotions. We have the amygdala, cingulate gyrus, and the hippocampus. The amygdala, we want to think emotional responses. Amygdala, emotional responses. Cingulate gyrus, think expression of emotion as action or gesture. Hippocampus, we're going to think, that's right, smell and storage of short-term memories. Okay, basal nuclei. That's right. Several nuclei of cells collected in the deep regions of the cerebrum. Overall, it's involved in motor coordination and short-term motor sequences. Important one to know about is the substantia nigra because it's damaged in Parkinson's disease. Diencephalon and pituitary. What do we have here? That's right. That's the thalamus. We associate that with sensory relay to the parietal lobe. Okay. How about here? That's right. That's right. The hypothalamus. Many functions here: blood pressure, water balance, wake, sleep, body temperature, ANS control, hunger, salt balance, and remember, it controls the pituitary. What about here? That's right. That's our pituitary gland. It's what we call the master gland of the body. It's going to control most of the major hormones of the body. How about here? Right on. Hypothalamus, also called the pineal gland. And remember, it's also part of the sleep and hibernation sequence. Okay, let's take a look at mesencephalon in midbrain. First of all, remember the corporate quadrimini or the superior colliculi and inferior colliculi. Here's our superior colliculi, where we have visceral reflexes. Here, that's right. That's our inferior colliculi. Auditory reflexes. How about here? Region, think region. That's right, midbrain. All of the tracks from cerebrum down to the spinal cord. Here we find the origin of cranial nerve number 3, midbrain. Okay, let's talk mesencephalon, pons, and cerebellum. That's right. That's our cerebellum. Here we get our motor coordination, memory for learned motor patterns. For example, walking, driving, riding a bicycle, playing an instrument. What about here? That's right. Here we have the arbor vitae. The center of the cerebellum is called the arbor vitae. That's where you see these white tracks. Arbor vitae meaning tree of life. Good. What about here? Right on. Pons. You're thinking relay of sensory information from the cerebrum to the cerebellum. Now we're taking a look at mesencephalon and medulla oblongata. This is the medulla oblongata. You want to remember that medulla oblongata has cardiac control and respiratory control. Let's talk about the ventricles of the brain. Remember, we started off with that neural tube. So the brain has spaces because it grew around that neural tube. These spaces are called, that's right, ventricles. We have 2 lateral ventricles in the middle of the cerebral hemispheres. Our third ventricle is in the middle of the thalamus, and we have the cerebral aqueduct connecting that third ventricle to the fourth ventricle. Our fourth ventricle is between the cerebellum and the brainstem. Let's talk function. The ventricle's function is to make cerebral spinal fluid, CSF, at the choroid plexus capillaris. What's the function of cerebral spinal fluid, CSF? That's right. The function of cerebral spinal fluid is to cushion, buffer, and protect the brain. Here's an image of the ventricles model from the laboratory. You're going to want to be familiar with this and some of the landmarks. Right here, we have, that's right, the lateral ventricle, right side. Here, that's right. We have the choroid plexus. Again, remember, this makes cerebral spinal fluid, CSF. Okay. What about here? That's right. This is our third ventricle in the center of the thalamus. Here. That's right. Good. Cerebral aqueduct. Okay. What about here? Right on. We call that the fourth ventricle. What about here? Yeah, that's the left lateral ventricle. Let's take a look at the internal ventricles on this mid-sagittal model. Here. That's right. That small hole is the interventricular foramen for lateral ventricles. How about here? Right on. Third ventricle. Remember, the third ventricle is in the middle of the thalamus and hypothalamus. How about here? That's right. That's our fourth ventricle. What about here? You're doing good, by the way. Keep up the good work. That's right. This is our cerebral aqueduct. Cerebral aqueduct. Coverings of the brain. 3 layers, right? We have 3 layers. Let's talk about this. Let's review. This layer covers the surface of the brain and goes down into the sulci. This layer covers the surface of the brain and goes down into the sulci. That's right. Pia mater. A spider web-like middle layer. What do we call the spider? That's right. Arachnoid membrane. The very tough outer covering of the brain. It lines the inside of the skull. What do we call that? Right on. Dura mater. A few important notes. Meningitis. Meningitis is an inflammation of the coverings of the brain, the meninges, not the brain, caused by, that's right, infection, viral or bacterial, rarely fungal, but it can happen. It can happen.